In this video, I'm going to teach you how to break out of the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and step into God's abundance. You see, God's plan was never for you to live paycheck to paycheck. That was never the case. It isn't even a test, and it definitely wasn't spiritual warfare. And surely it's not your cross to carry, because this is a trap. It's a pattern. It's a lifestyle that has become a part of who you are, but it can be broken right now, today. But it's not going to break without you moving forward in victory. It's not going to break with you using budgeting apps and financial principles. You won't be able to break this by switching jobs or following what the world has, because in order to break the cycle, you need to change your source. And so let me go ahead and get something very important across the thing. Your job and you, in the power you have, even your inheritance you might have gotten from your parents, is not your provider. God is. This is very key, because your job is a resource. God's the source. If your paycheck becomes your provider, then your faith is in the paper and not in the power. That's why people panic when their hours get cut or when they get laid off, especially when the market shifts. Why do the people lose sleep when they're laid off and go ahead and try to switch jobs? Because they fear the promotion rather than preparing for the provision. That's key. If God's your source, you don't fear subtraction. You expect multiplication, because God's not broke and God's not limited. God doesn't depend on the economy, because you can't live in kingdom overflow if you're still bowing to worldly paychecks. The Israelites ate fresh manna every single day. God didn't give them a 40-day supply when they were in the wilderness. He gave them just enough for that morning, or even 2 days if you include the Sabbath. Why? Because overflow doesn't come from stockpiling. It comes from seeking the Lord. If you want to manage God's money God's way, then you need to stop depending on the monthly plans you've put in place and the worldly principles that you're stewarding, and start depending on God's daily wisdom. Stop asking, what should I do with this paycheck? And start asking God, what are you saying about this provision and how I can use it as a seed? Your budget might keep you afloat and actually help you organize what you're doing, but it's God's voice that will launch you forward in a big and powerful way. Man shall not live on bread alone was the word that Jesus said when he was confronted by the devil. But what happens is every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. That's the key truth that you have to understand. Debt isn't a burden, and it isn't a vehicle to make more wealth, as some people will try to tell you. It's a bondage. Proverbs 22 says, the borrower is the servant to the lender. This isn't poetry. This is about positioning. Debt places you under the authority of something other than God. And for those who have debt, I'm not trying to be condemning, but I want to show you a path forward, because you might be saved in Jesus Christ, but if your finances are chained to the world system, so is your freedom. God didn't just want to get Israel out of Egypt. He wanted to break Egypt out of Israel. It's time to cancel the contract with lack. Stop partnering with Visa and MasterCard and start partnering with God's vision, because you cannot sow in faith while you're surviving on borrowed money. And that's what no one tells you. Getting out of debt isn't just a financial goal. It's more than that. Why? Because what happens is debt will delay your destiny. It keeps you focused on catching up and never moving ahead. You spend more time calculating interest and managing your budget and paying your bills than hearing God's instruction for the day ahead. You'll start to sow less, you'll dream less, and guess what? You'll move less. Your debt will steal your clarity and your charity, and it will also cloud your calling. And that's not just bondage, that's the strategy of the kingdom of darkness. So how do you battle against this and with win? You don't do it with fear, you don't even do it with frustration, but what happens is you follow God's order with radical discipline and talking about next steps, because God has a plan no matter how much debt you're in, including if that debt exceeds $1 billion. And this isn't just hype. This isn't just prayer. It's the wisdom of God in motion, and there's proof out there. Proverbs is filled with financial principles that build wealth without being held hostage. And let's go ahead and walk through them. Start with tracking every single dollar. Proverbs 27:23 says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks. What does that mean in today's language? Know where your money is going, because if you don't manage it, you're going to end up losing it. Proverbs 21:17 says, he who loves pleasure will be a poor man. So in other words, don't chase comfort, because you're never going to build capacity, because capacity is formed through stretching, and stretching's not comfortable. Pay off your debt, because it's a strategy of the devil to keep you in chains. Proverbs 6:5 says, deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hunter. Ooh, that's so powerful. Don't tolerate debt. Run from it. Get every single extra dollar you have, but then don't reward yourself. Wage war against what's coming against you. The faster you pay it off, the freer you become. Store up, but then don't stockpile. Proverbs 21:20 says, there is treasure in the house of the wise, but a foolish man devours everything he has. Savings is biblical, but hoarding is not. Look, if you want to understand a little further, go ahead and study what Joseph did in the 7 years of plenty versus the 7 years of lack. The wise don't spend everything they earn. They prepare what they have and they move forward in diligence. But don't prepare out of fear. Prepare out of godly foresight that he gives you in your quiet time. Because don't react, you're building. Plan for increase in those moments, not for survival. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your plans to the Lord and your thoughts will be established. Survival says, I hope I make it. Stewardship says, I know what to do when it comes. You don't need more money to prosper. You need a plan for what you need to do when it arrives. Don't let your past normalize poverty or even influence your plans. Don't let your upbringing bring excuses that your lack is spiritual. And don't let the religious voices convince you God wants you to struggle, because that's not the gospel. And that isn't the Jesus that walked through that. And it's also not your portion as a part of your kingdom inheritance. Psalm 34:10 says, the lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Did you hear that? Lack's not your covenant. Overflow is. God didn't create you to live paycheck to paycheck. He created you to fund nations. God's going to bless you for what you build, not what you beg for. You can't pray your way out of what you spent your way into, and you can't fast your way out of foolishness. God's merciful, but he blesses stewardship, not sloppy financial management. God told Adam to tend the garden, not to admire and just watch the trees. That means money doesn't grow by prayer alone. It multiplies through responsibility and faith-filled actions. The Bible doesn't say, well done and good and faithful believer. It says, well done, good and faithful servant. Faithfulness is the seed of favor. Management is the soil of miracles. Breaking the cycle starts in your mind, not in your bank account. The cycle of lack isn't broken when you make more money. It's broken when you think differently about the money you already have. If you believe your job is your source, you're going to stay in survival mode your whole life. If you believe God is your source, you're going to start operating like a steward and you will never lack for a single thing. That means when you do get a raise, don't go ahead and upgrade your lifestyle. Upgrade your level of obedience. That's so key. That means when you get unexpected income, don't go ahead and run an Amazon or spend it on that vacation. Run to Christ and ask for wisdom what you should do with it. Your mind is a vault, and if you don't continually renew it, no amount of increase, especially financial, will ever satisfy you. Build a life that funds the kingdom, that is righteous in mind and noble and holy, and that will set you in a place where you can move forward. Here's the final piece of wisdom that you can move forward. You weren't called to simply be debt-free. You were called to be destiny funded, meaning debt freedom is just the basement. It's the floor. Overflow is where you're supposed to be. Why? Because God wants your life to be a living river, not a reservoir that stockpiles it. He wants you to flow and continue to flow so he can move through you, not just for it to stop with you. When he blesses you, he wants you to bless others, overflow into them. When he increases you, he wants you to increase others so that you can finance the mission of God. When he fills your cup, he wants it to overflow, because that then becomes the source of someone else's breakthrough. He blesses others through his people. Finally, my charge for you is to step into God's abundance. Because here's the truth. You can stay in the world of paycheck to paycheck. Ultimately, that's your choice if you feel that's your comfort. But ultimately, that will fail you at some point, especially in any of the economies that the world wants to bring in. And you can believe the lies that money is evil, that struggle is spiritual, that wealth is worldly, and the Christians shouldn't have it. But God's calling you higher because He's got a better plan for you. And it's not just for your benefit, it's for His kingdom expansion, because His kingdom expands through you. He wants you to be free from bondage. He wants you to be free from begging. He wants you to be free from the anxiety that keeps you up at night. And it starts right now, not next year, not when you get a raise, and not when your debt is gone. Right now, you go ahead, break the cycle today when you go ahead and believe these key facts. God is my source. His wisdom is my strategy. His stewardship and His plan is the weapon I get to use moving forward, and overflow is my portion. So today, I don't want you to wait on change. I want you to choose it. I don't want you to stay in the cycle of lack. I want you to smash it. I don't want you just to survive. I want you to step into the season of an abundance, because you are a steward. You are God's vessel, and you are God's kingdom financier. And guess what? Your days of lack are over.